See, if it were up to me, Bran's series wrap-up would have looked a little something like this. I know what you're thinking. Game of Thrones, that was years ago. Why are you talking about it now? Well, because that's what I do here. I talk about older stuff. I'm not built for speed. I'm built for comfort. I like to stick to stories people already know backwards and forwards and have strong opinions on. That being said, I thought it would be fun to start a new series called How It Should Have Ended, and we can take the most fumbled finales and talk about how, well, they should have ended. And what better show to cover than Game of Thrones? Oh, what might have been. We sank so many years into it, didn't we? We waited, we read, we watched, we bought the box sets. The finale to Game of Thrones was supposed to be the finale to rule all finales. And the trust we put in them, confident that all the loose ends, all the mysterious characters, the untold backstories would all come together in a perfect crescendo that would echo through the halls of time. God, that show really had potential, didn't it? The landscape, the wardrobe, the sets, the actors. It had so much going for it, but it just fizzled out before it crossed the finish line. Now, there were about 100 characters and story arcs, and there's not enough time to cover all of them, so I'll stick to the big ones in this video. Now, this might rub some people the wrong way, but the White Walkers should have never been in the Game of Thrones story. The thing about Martin's writing is that it's clear he had a ton of ideas. It's a good problem to have. It can make for stories that are complex in wonderful ways, but without a plan, it just becomes 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. Sometimes the writer just has to say, this is a cool idea, but it doesn't belong in this story. I mean, just stick to the main characters. There's about 15 of them, and that's more than enough material to focus on. The White Walkers ended up as a strange distraction from the main story, which is unusual because I think the book actually opens with the aftermath of the White Walkers. So we could all be forgiven for thinking they were going to play a bigger role in the overarching story, and somehow everything would pivot around them in some yet unexplored explanation. But that's how it remained. Unexplained. What they could have done is write a scene where Ned Stark is telling Arya a suitably dark bedtime story about the White Walkers. Then, if they ever wrote a standalone story or series about the White Walkers, the audience would have that, oh yeah, moment when they remember the reference back from Game of Thrones. The next issue with the final season is they needed way more time to wrap it up. Season 8 was 6 episodes long. 6! And even with the last few episodes running about 25 minutes longer than usual, it doesn't make up for what is essentially 4 missing episodes. I figure there's 2 ways you can write a finale. First, you can have everything start to slowly wind down and come to a comfortable end. Or you can have everything ramping up steadily until everything comes to a head simultaneously. The latter would be a better solution for a show like Game of Thrones. I think that's probably what the writers were going for, but it was rushed. They should have had the ending worked out and decided way back in season 5 or 6. Then they could have written realistic plots where everything comes together elegantly. Instead, we got a finale that felt like the writers got a 90-minute warning before they had to turn in their final draft, and as a result, nobody got the ending they deserved, especially this bitch. Daenerys' descent into madness was one of the most jarring turns in the series. Not because it didn't make sense, but because it happened too fast. Daenerys' death should still happen, but not the way it did in the series. It might have been cooler to have some kind of final showdown between Cersei and Daenerys. Maybe Cersei points out that after torching her city with dragonfire, she now owes Daenerys some payback, and abruptly, Cersei could stab Daenerys without warning. It would have to be sudden enough to surprise the audience, and then Cersei could say something like, a Lannister always pays his debts. And just when the audience is thinking, damn it, this lady keeps surviving, she turns around and bam, Cersei is nose to nose with the dragon who wastes no time in torching her. Full on Cersei flambe. And you'd even be able to make out the look of shock still on her charcoal face. But of all the missteps in the Game of Thrones finale, the most unforgivable was making Bran king. What pencil-pushing twerp thought after everything, Bran, of all people, should be made king? Bran, who spent the entire series looking at people like this, and generally being unlikable and condescending. No. I think the best option would have been someone with the perfect combination of brains, likability, and a harrowing past. Tyrion. It would have satisfied the writer's need to land on someone unlikely while simultaneously choosing a fan favorite. They should have done better by Tyrion in the last few seasons. They wasted the potential that character had. Tyrion started out as an outcast, but was quickly revealed to be one of the smartest characters in the story. It felt like in the last 4 seasons, he was constantly somebody's prisoner with his wrists bound. And this is the thing with some writers. I'd say 95% of the time when a series or franchise starts to fail, it's because the writer has lost sight of what made the story good. If you don't understand the audience, and if you don't understand what it was about your show that turned a viewer into a fan, and if you can't see what elements of your character resonates with people, then it's just a matter of time. You're going to squander your gold mine because no budget in the world will save a show that's lost sight of its own magic. But anyway, let me know what you think. If you were in the writer's room, who would you have crowned in the finale? Thanks for watching.